Okay, moderator, I think we want to start our meeting. Is everything ready?
Yes, sir, it is.
Do you think our bandwidth has issues if I encourage our board members to turn on their camera?
Right now, it does appear that we are holding pretty strong. I will ensure that I let the program know if I start seeing any obstacles.
Okay. Okay, very well. So the board members, if you can, I encourage you to turn on your camera. So I would like to start today's meeting by honoring the Black History Month. As the president of the California Architects Board, and on behalf of the board, I would like to commemorate that a legendary Californian architect. His name is Paul Revere Williams, FAIA, and if I can have the image, a moderator to support my remark.
Chao, this is Laura. While that's coming up, do you want to establish a quorum?
Yes, let's do that. Thanks for the reminding. Yeah. So I would like ask our secretary Robert Pearman to call the roll, see if we have a quorum for the meeting.
Fine. Tian Fang,
Hi, I'm here.
Malcolm Gladstone,
Here.
Pascual Gutierrez,
Here.
Sylvia Kwan, we'll go back to her. Ebony Lewis,
Here.
Robert Pearman present. Ronald Jones,
Present.
thank you. Nilza Serrano, not yet. Charles Sonny Ward,
I'm here.
Sylvia Kwan again. You have a quorum. We'll will acknowledge yourself later.
Thank you. By the way, Robert, your voice seems a little low. I don't know if any way you can adjust. All right. So this month's meeting, let's move forward to that display of the remarks. Happened to coincide with April, so it is our opportunity to celebrate the architecture community, that the contribution to this annual event. So I actually, in addition to my comment, would like to see any of my fellow board members, particularly who are architects, would like make additional remark in this occasion. And I would more than happy to yield some time to you. Well, looks like you have some thoughts want to share with us.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Spang. Good morning, members. I have to say that I'm excited to hear and see that we are recognizing Paul Williams. I'm excited about the opportunity to speak a little bit about my relationship with him and his family and his history. Paul was first introduced to me as a young high school student in Philadelphia. We were tasked as a young architectural group with writing a paper on architects of interest. And my instructor, as you can imagine during that time, most of the students basically looked at people like Berkeley Wright, Michael Graves, Robert Stern, But my instructor suggested that I basically look at Paul Williams as a subject matter. I had never heard of him at that time, and I was excited to basically read and learn about this really dynamic professional architect who designed homes for the stars and for the rich and famous. So it's not an accident that my career path has basically followed that in some ways, because for the last 28 years, I've been a residential architect. It just so happened that when I came to Berkeley, just coincidentally, one of my closest friends turned out to be his grandson, Glenn Harvey. And Glenn is a trailblazer in his own right. He is actually the president and CEO of the Major League Baseball's Players Association. And so it's ironic that that today we're again celebrating Paul's life. But there's a few things that resonate with Paul's history. And if you haven't seen it, last February, PBS did a fantastic documentary on Paul that I think is worth looking at. And one of the things that he was quoted as saying then, that I shared in my professional practice experience, is that he was told that he should not basically study architecture. He said primarily because Black people couldn't afford to hire him to design their homes, and white people would not. And so in the 28 years that I've been in private practice in the residential sphere myself, I can say that I have never ever been, and I've designed projects, master plan communities for some of the nation's largest publicly traded home builders. I have never been in a room with another Black architect in 28 years. And so the residential lane or residential sphere of architecture is really challenging for communities of color. But I'm excited to basically look back, and as you can see here, I have a book of Paul Williams, and one of 6 of his books that I have actually, because I basically found his work to be iconic. One of the things that I would basically say, as you mentioned, or may or may not know, Paul happened to be the first African American architect who became a member of the AIA, the first fellow architect of color to become a member of the fellow AIA member as well. And the unfortunate thing is that he was recognized by the AIA in his highest recognition as a gold medal candidate in 2017, some 37 years after his death. So that was a disappointing part about his engagement in the profession. But I think that he's worth celebrating. If you haven't seen or read about his life, I think it's really worth doing. His granddaughter has done a fantastic job. Most of the publications that I have were published after 1990, and so it was long after, or at the fourth quarter of his career. But I think his career is storied and worth really looking into and investigating. Thank you, Chairman Fang. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your insight. Yeah. But some just a note. I think many other architects who also receive a gold medalist after actually they are dead. So anyway, I hope for this. What's interesting is I noticed by looking up his year of birth happened to be his birthday is actually this month, last week. So that's a really fitting occasion for us to do so. Any other members would like offer additional remarks?
Tian.
Yes, go ahead.
I just would like to make those in attendance aware that if you have time tonight, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern time, you can register and participate or listen in on the National Organization of Minority Architects Town Hall meeting. I'm sure that you'll find that somewhat enlightening and understand the spectrum of influences that NOMA is putting forth. So that's tonight, and you can register on the National Organization of Minority Architects website.
Thanks. Okay. So for the image I display on the left, so there was a recently last year, the materials training or reviewers practice, which largely destroyed, but finally get collected as an archive that now have a permanent home by joint effort of USC and Getty. I will get invitation to attending one of the meetings. I just want to report to you it was acquisition just done last week, and due to a COVID, so it's not really ready for actual use yet. We perhaps have to wait a year or two before the material will be scanned, documented, and offer some access by research and the public. So just to update, since I sit in that meetings, I just want to give you that update. Okay, with that said, I would like start the meeting to announce that this meeting is being webcast, as you know of, pursuant to the provisions of Governor Gavin Newsom's Executive Order N2920, dated March 17th, 2020. A physical meeting location is not being provided. I want to also thank our guests and attending publics, as well as a member from our landscape technical committee, Susan Andre, to attending this meeting. Also with us today is our new attorney. It's the DCA's legal counsel, Michael Kendall. And Michael and I met briefly. I would like him to introduce himself to the board, but by way of introducing him, I want to mention he has a very interesting architecture experience that I thought will come handy to our board. So I hope, Michael, you will talk about your architecture experience. The floor is all yours, Michael.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. President, members. First, it's an honor to be assigned to be your legal counsel. I've a little bit about my professional background. I've been with the Department of Consumer Affairs for about 2 years now. I previously had the Dental Board of California as a client, but currently, in addition to the Architects Board, I also have the Physical Therapy Board of California and the Board of Chiropractic Examiners. So my boards and my other clients certainly keep me busy. Prior to being at DCA, I was at the Department of Social Services for around 11 years. And then I've been around state service a bit. I've also worked for the Department of Developmental Services, the Secretary of State's office, and the Legislative Council, which provides all the legal services and bill drafting for the legislature. Before that, for a few years, fresh out of law school, I was a deputy state public defender in Colorado. But President Feng's mention of my architectural anecdote is that I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, about 60 miles from Frank Lloyd Wright's Fallingwater. And I've been there at least twice. The third time, I may have been there a third time as a child on a field trip when I was too young to appreciate what I was seeing. But certainly in the last 10, 15 years, I've been there a couple different times. And it is most certainly a magical place. The horizontal windows at the bottom that when closed cover the waterfall portion. When they open those windows for tours of the house, I mean, the house is built on the waterfall, but it feels like you're in or under the waterfall. And the sound really reverberates incredibly through the whole house. So I certainly have no architectural skill, but I appreciate it as the art that it is. Again, it's an honor to be here, and if there's any way I can help any of you, my passion in this job is certainly helping you do your jobs, and I enjoy that. So thank you very much for having me and for the opportunity to introduce myself a bit.
Thank you, Michael. We look forward to having your counsel and advice. Okay, I also want to announce, we mentioned this last week, but I like to formally announce that for the record of the meeting, that Vicky Meyer, who was our assistant executive officer for the past 25 years, has retired last year, November 1st. And he was really extremely dedicated to the board and offered all information and advice throughout the year. I know her, and we wish her well in her retirement. I don't know if she is present here now. If she is, I hope she can turn on her camera and let us to see her. But anyway, okay. So with Michael joining us, I just want to announce also for the record that our former counsel attorney, Tara Welsh, has new assignment, work for now a different board. And as a legal counsel, and her advice and knowledge was has a tremendous importance to us, and we wish her well as well. And last announcement from me is procedural. All motions of need a second and need to be repeated for the record. And the votes on all motions will be called by with our secretary when we have agenda items. So with that said, I like to start with agenda number 3, which is C, and inviting Carrie Holmes, Deputy Directors for our Board and Bureau Relations at DCA, give us an update of the state of the department. Carrie.
Good morning. Thank you, Board President Feng and board members. I'm Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide a department update. COVID-19 has affected every aspect of our work. After a temporary closure in December due to state and local stay-at-home orders, DCA offices are again open with preventative measures to safeguard the health and safety of our employees and visitors. DCA and its boards and bureaus are maximizing telework to help reduce COVID transmission risk for all employees. Public health measures such as distancing, face covering, and frequent hand washing are required for employees who cannot telework. Thank you to your executive officer and board staff who have been working so hard to maintain excellent customer service and to protect the public through these challenging times. DCA is pleased to announce that on January 12th, Governor Newsom appointed Monica Vargas of Sacramento to the role of Deputy Director of Communications at DCA. Monica has been an information officer in the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services since 2015. She was also previously an information officer at DCA. DCA is so pleased to have her back. She hit the ground running just last month. On February 2nd, Governor Newsom appointed Sarah Murillo as Deputy Director of Administrative Services at DCA. Ms. Murillo has gained a wide range of experience in nearly 20 years of service to Californians in various state departments, including the California Complete Count 2020. Ms. Murillo comes to DCA with a skill set that makes her well-suited to support all the entities within the department. Her appointment fills the final vacancy in DCA's office, and DCA will be so pleased to welcome her to the team next week. For current board members, 2021 is a mandatory sexual harassment prevention training year. This means all employees and board members are required to complete the training during the year. I'd also like to remind you that Form 700 filings are due by April 1st. You as board members are designated appointees and required to complete a Statement of Economic Interest Form 700, even if you have no reportable interests. If you have any questions about how to file, you may speak to the department's Conflict of Interest Filing Officer, Jill Johnson, in DCA Human Resources. I'm pleased to let you know that Board and Bureau Relations, in partnership with Solid Training, has developed a brand new board member orientation training to be held on WebEx March 11th. We are very excited about the new and improved training, which has been updated based on board member feedback and requests. As a reminder, newly appointed and reappointed board members are required to take the training within a year. To register for BMOT or more details, please visit the DCA Board Member Resource Center at dca.ca.gov. Finally, I'd like to let you know about 2 new exciting initiatives launched by DCA Director Kirkmeyer for 2021 to enhance DCA services to all boards and bureaus. The first is an Executive Officer Cabinet. This group of board and bureau executives will maintain regular communication, provide feedback and information to DCA, and assist with special projects that will impact all boards and bureaus. The second is the Enlightened Licensing project. This work group is being formed to utilize licensing subject matter experts within the entire Department of DCA. The group will help individual boards and bureaus streamline and make their licensing processes more effective and efficient by utilizing best practices, information technology, and cost-saving measures. These 2 initiatives are just kicking off, and I'll keep you updated on their work and impacts. As always, Board and Bureau Relations is here to help. If there's anything we can do to assist, please reach out. That concludes my presentation, and I'll hand it back over to Board President Fang.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes. It's always give you brief us at each meeting. Thank you again, and we will hear from you again.
Mr. President, this is Secretary. Can I confirm while we have a break that Sylvia Kwan is present?
Sylvia, are you there?
She's there, but she's on mute, and it seems like her sound's not working.
Yeah, she's still got a problem. Okay, I'll mark her as present, but hopefully.
This is the moderator, Sylvia. Just a reminder that since you are connected through your telephone, you do have to unmute your computer and to enable you the ability to communicate during this meeting.
Oh, I am sorry. I did not realize that now. Okay, so Robert, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're
sorry.
present.
I've been
Thank
present 3 times, but you didn't know. Okay, I apologize. Okay, thanks, moderator.
Okay, now I'd like to open up to the public comment for any item on the agenda. Moderators, see if we have any public members wish to speak or text you any questions.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the question mark within the square in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. Reference will be displayed on the screen for you to follow. Please type, "I would like to make a public comment," and send to all panelists. All comments will be addressed in the order they are received. I will pause momentarily to allow you time to access this feature. This is the moderator, and it does not appear we've received any requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Feature has been closed.
Okay, our item E on the agenda is to review and a possible action for the last board meeting on December 11th. So a quick typo, I think, occurred on the attendees list. Betsy Gerhardt, remember? And was spelled as Brett, I think. Staff want to take a look at the spell of the typo.
This is Laura. I see it. We'll make that correction. Thank you.
I'll make a motion if it's appropriate, which we can vote on after public comment, to accept the minutes as presented with that typographical error corrected.
And anyone second the motion?
Second.
Secretary, we can call the roll.
Do we need to ask for public comment? I don't want to get caught up later. We sometimes do it.
Yeah, Mr. President, this is legal counsel. We should ask for public comment on the motion. Thank you.
All right. So moderator, please proceed to open the public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the question mark within the square in the lower right-hand portion of the screen and type, "I would like to make a public comment." I will pause a moment to allow individuals time to access this feature. As a reminder to members of the panel, if you are currently not speaking, to please ensure that your microphone is muted, as too many open mics will cause some feedback and interference. At this time, Mr. President, we have not received any requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Feature has been closed.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I can call the roll now on the vote for that motion.
Please.
Tian Fang,
Yes.
Malcolm Gladstone,
Yes.
Pascal Gutierrez,
Yes.
Sylvia Kwan,
Abstain. I was not present at the meeting.
thank you. Ebony Lewis,
Yes.
Robert Perriman, yes. Ronald Jones,
Yes.
and Charles Ward.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Yes.
We are now on the agenda F, and it is my honor to present this year's Octavius Morgan Distinguished Service Award to our outstanding volunteers. First is we present the award to Yvonne Harbers. Yvonne, if you are in attendance, please turn on your camera so the board member can recognize. And was licensed in 1989 and first began her service to the California Architects Board in 2010 as a commissioner for the oral format of California supplemental exam. Hobbs has continued to serve as a subject matter expert in development of the California supplement exam. The knowledge that she contributes to the exam development is superior, and her commitment to support the board's mission is exemplary. Due to her willingness to be available even when called upon at the last minute. Hobbs currently works for the Bureau of Veritas, French consulting firm. Among other employers, Hobbs worked for Kaiser Permanente, where she was formerly responsible for the planning, design, construction, licensing, and opening of a Kaiser Medical Center in San Angelo. In addition to California, she has worked in Texas, New Mexico, Oregon, Arizona, and the Soviet Union, France, Taiwan, Singapore, Korea, Japan, Israel, and Germany. Wow. The board would like to honor Yvonne Hobbs with the Octavia Morgan Award 2020 for her contribution to examination development and outstanding service to board. Yvonne? Okay, good. Our next recipient is Dave Higginson. Dave Higginson, please, if you are in attendance, turn on your camera so the board member can recognize. First began his service to the California Architects Board in 2005 as a commissioner for the oral format of California supplement exam. From that time and after the CSE migrates to a computer-based test environment in 2011. Higginson has contributed to the service as a subject matter expert in development of CSE. His recent contribution to exam development is expected to enhance the CSE for years to come. Higginson first was licensed to practice architecture in California in 1988 and is currently a principal partner of a firm located in Southern California. And he is a certified safety assessment program volunteer and has participated in numerous emergency responses with the California Office of Emergency Services, including earthquake assessment in Napa and Salcedo as well as spending 2 weeks in Mississippi after Hurricane Katrina. The board would like to honor David Higginson with the Octavia Morgan Award 2020 for his contribution to the examination, development, and outstanding service to the board. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay, the next item, we will have a guest to speak to us, but to set the stage a little bit, the pandemic has impacted all walks of life in the past year, or actually, it's a little more than a year, and certainly to the impact to the education and architecture education. So, the board is always concerned or interested to understanding how the education will shape the future architects in California. So today we have an opportunity to have a professor from California, University of California, Professor Chao, who has kindly accepted our invitation to share her perspective, how the pandemic impacts the education, and willing to have a conversation with us about how this impact to the education may or may not impact the outcome of their students to be architects, hopefully practice in California. So with that said, I would like to invite Professor Renee Chao, Chair of Architecture at the UC Berkeley's College of Environmental Design. Renee, please take it forward.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we can now.
Perfect. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. And thank you, Board President Fang, for that introduction. And hello to Sylvia. I want to first acknowledge that there have been many challenges that our students, staff, and faculty have been facing in the pandemic. Like all of you, none of this has been easy, either personally or professionally. But I think we have all been interested in taking up the question about how the pandemic has affected our instruction. This is exactly the discussion we've been having as a faculty and with our students, particularly as we transition back to in-person instruction. What have we lost and what have we gained in a year of being apart? If I could have the next slide, please. Without a doubt, for all of us, but especially for our students, the social component of learning about architecture and about life really has been a loss. We miss being with people and visiting places together. Next. What I'd like to talk about is the silver lining we've found during the pandemic and then some of the losses and its relationship to licensure, of course. Our department, just as a quick review, offers 5 degrees, a BA, which is pre-professional, an MArch, which is our professional degree, a Master of Advanced Architectural Design, which is post-professional, and then we also offer 2 research graduate degrees, the Master of Science and our doctorate. I'll be discussing mostly the BA and the MArch, which are the key degree programs for licensure. Next. So in the silver lining category, we've learned much about what we can do better, and none of this will go away when we return to in-person instruction. First, remote teaching has required a greater explicitness in how we deliver our course materials in our architectural sciences, humanities, and especially in architectural design. Next. We've learned a great deal about the potentials of asynchronous lectures. And going forward, some materials, such as the instruction of representational skills, colloquia, will continue to be delivered asynchronously. So instructors can spend their class time working with students directly rather than delivering the same over and over again. Next. In this particular example, we were able to invite guests to our classes and design studios from throughout the world, who then can share the best of everything. As a public institution, we feel like we're finally keeping up with our privates. So here is a design studio in which Tony Griffin served as a guest lecturer, joining from New York. Next. Like explicitness and learning objectives, our students are learning to more carefully choose what tools they want to use. Rhino, AutoCAD, Adobe, analog, digital. How do our tools enable us to see certain things and what is hidden? Our students are developing more control over their drawing apps rather than being controlled by them. And frankly, this is all generated by the fact that we had to move all digitally. Here you see a sophomore class that introduces architectural representation. Next. And this is a close-up of one of those drawings on that previous panel. And at least for me, it's hard to tell. Is this a hand drawing or a computer drawing? Next. And my greatest delight is that students have returned to making analog models as well as drawings that include the tactility of assembling materials as part of their learning. These are models from the fall semester of the first year of the MArch sequence. Next. And perhaps this is true in the professional realm. The use of whiteboards has been a tremendous asset. Our faculty can now draw on student work again without damaging it, and there's a record of the conversation. We have infinite amounts of pinup space, and the work that was locked inside student computers after they go home, their classmates can now access it 24/7. Next. And then this is work from the fall again, the final year of the MArch program, in which students now present with a combination of traditional digital drawings, but now, because we've gone remote, they can include videos, they have GIFs, and on the left side of that board, you can see a model that if you were the critic, you can actually go touch the model, and then you actually walk into it. So now the digital models are not just perspectives that are presented by the students, but you as a guest critic can come pick up a model and walk through it because we're in a digital environment. Next, please. The losses. Well, I, for one, am glad to see the hand models return rather than use the laser cutter for every small little cut that our students had to do. The loss of our fabrication lab, 3D printing, and robotics has been hard. Almost anything to do with materials and construction, particularly at the advanced level, has not really been replaceable in the remote situation. We've had good success in the remote setting with introductory and foundational material courses. We're sending home kits, or our students have been able to assemble kits to continue to do material research even individually. But the advanced work has come to a standstill. Next. I return to the students. There are two things that they have identified as difficult in the remote situation. The first is to learn design management. As you all know, design is an iterative process that is problem defining at the same time that it is problem solving. We all know that with every new pass we make, we learn something new. In all of this, students are having a hard time learning how to manage this designing because they can't see what others are doing as well. Students have said to me, sometimes this is as simple as knowing that they can stop and they can go home. Next. They should advance a video, I'm hoping. I'm going to ask the moderator if the video will play.
This is the moderator, and due to some bandwidth restrictions we're experiencing, the video has disabled.
Okay, that's too bad. This is a video of to address the loss in lateral learning. I think one of the things we all know is that students learn from the faculty. The students learn a great deal when the faculty are not around, and they learn from each other. This is more than just the design management, but it's truly the start of how they begin to build their practice. So we've in-house developed this new app called Virtual Bauer Worcester. And what it does is it allows the students to get together, to move up into the studios, to see each other's work, to move. They can pick up models and travel into them together with their avatars and walk around their design work together. So they're walking in the studio and working around their design work together. While it's clearly not the same as being in person, we plan to continue to use this platform well into the future because it has unlocked our computers in a way that allows our students to share. So I'll return to the topic that I think you are most interested in. Has the move to remote instruction lessened the quality of instruction for materials covered for licensure? The challenges have been many. The loss of infrastructure has been hard. The loss of income or loved ones, the challenges of maintaining a balanced workload. But from the examples I've shown you, I can wholeheartedly say that instruction relative to content is not only the same, but in some cases has actually gotten better. And we believe that we will make architectural education even stronger coming out of this pandemic. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for a very insightful observation. As we talked about this before, Professor Chao, what would you see if this trending continues? And as a student in your school, is 4 years of distinct experience. And if the pandemics and remote education only impacts 1 year, and he or she has another 3 years to compensate if need to be compensated. But if the pandemics last longer, if the experience expanding beyond 1 year, any unique concerns that you have if the students, let's say in worst scenarios, go through the entire degree in 4 years, remote education? What will be your concern?
Oh, I hope that doesn't happen. Is what my first
Never.
response to that. Because I think the reality is not from the educational point of view, because I'm convinced that we've learned a lot about how we can deliver material remotely. But the campus finances are so dependent on us being in person, so that would be the first thing. So it would not be the education, but it actually would have to be remodeled at the entire UC level. I think we'd find other models in which students would have to then, safe, find that lateral learning and that social ability to learn from each other in a different process. So that's a great question. Maybe I'm being too much of an optimist since we're already planning to come back to campus in person. I haven't quite gotten there yet. I'm not so worried about the content, really.
Yeah, very good perspective. I know many board members want to talk to you. I have one more question I saved for the last. Sylvia, you want to say something?
Okay. Yes, I'm intrigued by your comment about the analog models, which is, of course, what I had to do back in the last century. So the question I have is this. Of course, we made a big mess in studio and used balsa wood and, all kinds of different boards and X-Acto knives and et cetera. And we made a big mess in the studio. Now that I'm assuming that they could not go back to the studio, so were you expecting and did you expect your students to do all that work within the confines of their apartments? And I mean, how did they actually make these models?
So they did them wherever they were at. And we recognize, again, the infrastructure may not be set up for that to happen. But students are pretty clever, whether they're sitting on the floor or finding space under their desk. They are finding space. And I'm hoping that when we come back in person, that again, it will be not so much what is the better tool, but that students will recognize when the right tool is the appropriate tool to use.
Right, and just to finish up, so what I appreciate too about your making them do a physical model is that you're absolutely right. Nowadays, they do these beautiful models by 3D printing and the laser cutting, and they're just absolutely stunning. And now you're getting back to the rudimentary. So I think in a way that is a silver lining, because it's sort of, it's touch by touch and tangible, and makes you appreciate what you're building to make sure it's structurally sound and, all that kind of stuff that you don't have to worry so much with 3D printing. So I kind of like it. I think that definitely, I agree with you, that's a silver lining. So that's great that you're making them do it. In other words, you could have opted out of that.
Yes.
You and the other professors could have said, guys, it's too hard. Oh, gosh darn it, there's no 3D printer, there's no laser cutter. So, we're going to, give you a pass, and you didn't. So I appreciate giving them the hard work to do.
Thanks, Sylvia.
I see Sunny would like to speak.
Hi, thank you.
Excuse me, other board members, you can raise your hand on virtually or on screen. It's best on the participant list so I can see you. Because I don't get to see every board member on the screen. Charles, please.
Thank you. Hi, thanks for joining us today. I really loved your presentation. I wanted to just bring up a couple of things and also one question. I do think that a lot of these tools that you're talking about, I'm even finding in my own practice, specifically like the digital whiteboards, the idea that everyone can sort of place these presentations in a spot that doesn't disappear after the jury, so to speak, is really invaluable. We're finding that in our office as well, and also the ability to layer notes and comments atop student work by the professors without damaging the work. I love like this sort of forced respect that has sort of brought to the process, and I think that would be lovely to be able to take to be able to take that tool forward. I just wanted to comment that really stuck out. The other thing that I wanted to piggyback on what Sylvia was mentioning is I love the hand making that possibly is coming back, and also some of the hand drawing. But one image that you showed, which was the 3D printers with the filament with all of the little cubbies, made me realize that the technology has come so far that perhaps we're back in 1995, where universities were sort of providing laptops to students. I mean, maybe we're almost to the point where the 3D filament printer has become almost an analog construction technique where people are doing it at their desk or at home. There's no fumes and chemicals that are sort of being emitted. It's safe to do like outside of the fabrication lab, perhaps. And maybe that's also something that we could realize from the pandemic.
Thank you for that, Mr. Ward. For students that can afford 3D printers,
you're asking. Yeah, you're asking the question. Well, I'm making this sort of jump that there was a point when universities were helping assist students with the technology of the laptop. I know we've moved beyond that now, but maybe it's time for us to take a step back and look and see what we need to be helping assist our students with. And it might not be a laptop anymore, but it might be some of the smaller printers and some of the smaller technology. Maybe we sort of break down some of those barriers from people even coming out of their homes and that are working while they're in school, that maybe the school is loaning these smaller 3D printers to take home to sort of break down some of the barriers that are in place by coming in and to even using the digital lab at school. So the photo of the cubbies just brought that up because I realized, wow, the costs have come down, and wouldn't it be great to get that out of that sort of, I don't know, sacred model building space at the school, which does have its barriers. There's a lot of barriers to get into that space.
I will note Sylvia has suggested that somehow studios are cleaner, but we have 3D printers, as you say, now scattered all over the studio. And fortunately, the mess still exists, and I think it's a healthy sign.
Thank you.
So, yeah, actually, in conversation, Professor Chao also mentioned that the students do have an option to send a file to the digital lab and printing in their school's 3D model. So that's another benefit of online education. So, Professor Chao, we as the board also concerns our upcoming new architects to fill in potential void of aging issues. I don't know if you know, the average age of a practicing architect in California is 58.5 years old. So just in that context, do you see the current pandemic had any impact on your potential students' applications and enrollment? Are they, for example, on the declining, or have you seen anything that is concerning?
I do not, relative to applicant numbers like schools across the country. We were privileged to have about a 15% increase in applications to our professional program, to the MARC program. what we saw in this current academic year were that current students who were moving into their final year all chose to take a gap year and go out and work, and because they didn't want to do their final year remotely. And so I'm hoping that they'll be back next fall. So that was where we had our loss in our current students, but we don't see it in applications. And at some point, those current students will finish and get into the pipeline to get licensed.
That's a very encouraging sign. We have another board member, Ebony, would like speak to you. Ebony, go ahead.
Hi, Renee. Thanks for being here and sharing about the project work that the students have done. Can you share with us about more of the diversity of your student population or those that are in the program and what the impacts were on them personally? Did they need to move off campus? Did you find any gaps in resources that were available to them? Maybe just more about like how like life changes they were going through the program.
I'm sorry, my internet seemed to have cut out just a bit, but I gather your question was about.
I saw the spool, so I was asking more about like the student population of those that are in your program and if you guys found any gaps of resources for your students.
So I will confess that one of our undergraduate program, our BA, is the most diverse student body of all of campus relative to underrepresented minorities, relative to Pell Grant recipients. And so the sort of financial resources of studying architecture has been on our radar for the last few years. The reality is using whiteboards and Zoom has cut down on the cost tremendously. Students don't have to be printing their drawings out. In some cases, in the undergraduate studios, they're having to print, large format every 2 weeks, or they would have to tile and spend all the time tiling everything together. And so now everything is with whiteboards, and those costs, which are a couple of thousand, have been eliminated. That said, the infrastructure of studying remotely has increased. The campus has actually made an offer to buy computers for all students that needed them. And then our college also made an offer as well. If the campus level was not, we would supplement the money to make sure that it had the processing to do the graphic work that was needed. So there definitely were impacts. The hardest thing was for students who didn't have the Wi-Fi access. And again, campus was good about sending out, I forget what the little remote things are that allow you to get the access. So we recognize that this is a problem, and we have been trying to get infrastructure. But working from home is not great for every student, and we're trying to recognize that as well.
Thank you for sharing.
Any other members wish to discuss with Professor Chao? Okay, I see now. Thank you again, Professor Chao. It's really informative, and we actually like you come back maybe more often. So, okay.
Gladly. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much. We learned a lot, and we really appreciate the update. It's been great. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Laura and I, with has been discussed in the past few weeks about resume our professional organization outreach program that we did a few years ago. We said we want to put a break on it. And I think it's the time come back to revisit that program. And I'd like to actually spend some time to really, talk over with it. If I don't know if staff has my slides or item H.
Mr. President, this is Mike Oaks, legal counsel. Just
public comments.
A couple housekeeping items before we move on. Yes.
That's right.
We need to take public comment on both items F and G, F being the award presentations. Also, I saw at one point Vice President Serrano, but I'm not sure I see her now in the...
She signed in about 10 minutes ago, yes.
Okay, we should recognize her and add her to the roll. I'm not sure if I'm seeing her now in the list, but that is all.
This is the moderator, and it does appear that she has fallen back off the meeting.
Oh.
This is Laura. I can watch for her, and then we can announce her when she comes back.
Okay.
We are having some quality issues, so we may need to turn off cameras for those who aren't speaking. I think our moderator will let us know if we get to that point.
Okay. So, moderator, can we come back to item number F for any public comment? And we can do together both F and G for public comment.
Certainly. This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I am opening public comments for comments related to agenda item F and agenda item G. If you would like to make a public comment, I am displaying for your reference the instructions on the screen. Please click on the question mark within the square in the lower right-hand portion of your screen and type "I would like to make a comment." All comments will be asked in the order they are received. I will pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. We do have an individual identified as Glenn Gall that would like to make a public comment. Just a reminder to members of the public, you will be provided 2 minutes to make your comment and provided a 15-second warning. With that, Glenn, your microphone has been unmuted.
All right, very brief comment. Congratulations to both Dave and Yvonne. I've worked with them for many, many years with the supplemental exam. Both just workhorses, and I'm glad to see they're also still very involved with the process. As a member of the PQ committee, that sort of work really does not necessarily get enough attention. Kudos, so congratulations to them both. Thank you.
My apology. I just thought it would be nice if the recipients are still here. I'd like to encourage you to say something, use this opportunity if you wish. And we appreciate your work. And if anything you want to address to the board, you can use this opportunity. Yvonne and Dave.
With that, Mr. President, we do not have any additional requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the feature?
Yeah, please close the public comment and resume agenda item H, and with a projection of the display if you can.
Sorry, Mr. President, if you could give me 1 moment. I am trying to identify. It does appear that we may have Nilza available in our attendee list as a call-in user.
She is on phone.
Yes. So in order for me to locate who she is, I'm going to have to figure out which one is her. So if you don't mind me figuring for a second before we resume to H.
I don't mind at all. Yeah.
Okay. Calling user number 10. I'm going to unmute you. If you could please identify yourself. Calling user 10, you are unmuted now.
Hello, this is Milsa.
Okay. So I have identified the appropriate individual. Unfortunately, I don't have means to promote her to panelist at this time, but I will have her microphone unmuted. With that, you're very welcome. With that, we can resume with agenda item H, and I am displaying your materials now.
Okay. So what we did is simply cut and paste 3 or 4 years ago. We put this together with the objectives of outreach. We call them liaisons. And then we listed organizations that was assigned to us. And I recall one of the reasons we want to put on hold was too overwhelmed. One of the reasons I remember that because each of us assigned 4 to 5 organizations, and we have to report to every board meeting. I don't think this is necessary, conducive, but at the same time, I urge the board to think to having outreach restored. It is at least helpful to keep this community going with much broader industry members that our board's mission relates to. So I would steer the discussion in 2 fronts. One is if we can brainstorm a little bit, if we are resuming this program, what is our clear objective? What do we want to accomplish? And 2 is what are the organizations that we think it's critical right now? Organization plus school. A moderator, could you move to next slide as well? Then we come back to this slide. It is quite a task, and so by defining our objective a little bit better, maybe we can also streamline the organizations we are going to do outreach. So anyway, I like to have some time on this and take a break at 11:45 for 50 minutes, then we'll finish the remaining items. So let's go back to the previous slides. Sylvia, you were very active, and I remember a few of us really going out and doing things. And if we recall that, also Pascal, you have done quite a few. Should we visit our objectives? First of all, should we resume our outreach program?
If the question's to me, Tian, this is Pasquale.
Yeah.
I think we had, let's call it marginal success with the liaison program. And the reason I say marginal is because sometimes due to the efforts of board members, there was not a reciprocal response from some of the organizations that we reached out to. But for those that did, I think it was beneficial, particularly in my instance with the community colleges who were trying to navigate through the system and process of having students come to the community college, transfer onto an NAB accredited program, or university or school of architecture, or as you know, in California, having the option to use the multiple pathways to acquire licensure. So I think the effort that we did put in, and for the limited response we did get, it was well worth it. So I think that's something we can look at with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and let me add to that. I think there's a couple of problems with this as an ongoing program for us. One of the problems is that the board membership changes and evolves over time. as does the membership leadership of either the colleges or the organizations that you have listed here. So it's hard to maintain a sort of a steady state of good communication, let's say between two individuals, one from the board and one from the organization or the educational institution. So, you know, you do lose, but it ebbs and flows depending on the relationship that you can build. Like Pascal, I had maybe 1 or 2 successes out of the 6 or 7, I don't know how many I had assigned, but, you know, at least half a dozen. And I was only able to really build any kind of a conversation with 1 or 2. So the percentage of success was pretty low, you know, let's say under 20%. So the effort that we try to put in didn't result in a really a strong payback. I'd like to hear what other board members think as well. And we do have some new board members now. I'd like to hear from them because some of them have never participated in this program and maybe they're excited about it and have some new and fresh ideas on how to approach it.
That's why I'm thinking, thank you, Sylvia, to have the board member has some experiences to share first, and we want to listen to our new members. Ebony, you have done few too. What's your perspective?
My perspective is that I feel like it's great to have a relationship with the schools and programs. It provided for me as a public board member more insight of, you know, what's happening in the profession for the training of the architects. So like Sylvia said, like I would get, so say I had like 5, I don't remember how many I had. I spoke to 3, developed 1 really strong relationship with East LA, which was, they have an amazing program and they're super engaged and supportive of their students. But it also, by having that relationship and seeing another junior college, it almost feels like it would be beneficial for us to convene all the JCs so that they can see like the inequities of sources that they may have in the schools and advocate for more or figuring something out, because the way that East LA structured their program to bring in more resources for those students and have a strong relationship built with a 4-year university for students to transfer is very key. When we're thinking about diversity and inclusion in students getting exposure into the architect profession, they may start, you know, students of color may start at the junior college. And if they can't like go to a school like East LA that is like structured in the way that provides more opportunities for success to transfer, we need to like really address that pipeline issue at the junior college. And so I don't know that we really have, like, our board is a consumer protection board, so we don't have much power in that space, but we might be able to influence by connecting the different colleges together so that they can work together to address the pipeline issues, especially since, you know, most of the programs that we see that in California, there's a lot of international students. So I think that's the way that we can play in being more strategic versus just saying, hey, how are you guys doing? What are you up to? Is there anything that you want to know from the board? Because like when we like send out those like random emails, you don't really hear back and we don't know like where we play, but I think where we play is like just bringing them together.
So my personal experience was that if we look at the licensing process is a 3 education, experience and examination. So the board actually handles touch upon all 3, and of course we largely regulate on examinations and experience to make sure they are qualified to be licensed. So from that mission, I think there is quite a strong connections to reach out to the industry, which is more on our experience and practice, and reach out to the schools, which is more on education. But my personal feeling that time was lacking of a more specific objective. In other words, I remember we have to call people, and one of the school I was assigned to was very hard to get connected. And once it's connected, the conversation is harder to get started because the other side is not really clear what's your objective. I remember, I think it was the Chabot College architecture department. So, and then on the other side, if I'm a member of the education community or a member of a contracting community, it is good. If I'm being reached out, at least I come to appreciation of California Architects Board as an entity, as a regulatory body, and it reach out to us. So in that way, we kind of elevate our visibility and the influence, which was from a few years we said we like to enhance that. So I think the benefit on both sides. So with that said, maybe the new members can looking from outside. How would you react to this if we're going to resume this effort?
Well, can one old member also comment?
We can do raising your hand if you want, or you can jump in. I see Brett as raising his hand in both forms.
Yeah.
So you get a priority.
Yes. Hi. Well, I'm not clear whether the program was meant to benefit the schools more or our board more in educating us as to what the schools were up to. But it seems like, as a practical matter, the organizations weren't as interested as the board knowing about us as we were interested in knowing about them. And I don't think, unless it's reciprocal at a very high percentage of contacts, it's really, worthwhile. I think that, if the board wants to know more about what the schools are doing, which seems to have been the instigation for the program in the past, there may be some other ways to explore other than through contact of these organizations. So I guess if we're going to get the program going again, I'd like to hear what other organizations, groups, etc., are out there, rather than going back to the group that's on the screen in front of us. And again, I'd just like to know from board members who've done it in the past whether the intent was more for board members' education or for the education of the organization about what we do. Thank you.
This is Bob Pearman. Couple of thoughts. I think that one idea is, since the staff does interact with some of these organizations, etc., more than we do, we might pair a outreach person from the board with a staff person who deals with that group from time to time and have a mutual conversation. That helps with the continuity that Sylvia mentioned is absent because the board changes and you've got an ongoing relationship. So, for example, somebody deals with California building officials a little bit more often. Obviously, someone may deal with the landscape architect registration board. So maybe you pair a board member with that staffer to help along with the communication that's going on. And the other thing is you might try and group the organizations and the schools into one little body, and then you have a Zoom call with 3 of the organizations or something like that, whether the purpose is to inform about what we're doing or to learn what they're doing, what's current. Essentially, I think if you get one good relationship, and maybe you ask the board members to just pick 1 or 2, not give them 6 or 7, but pick 1 or 2 of interest and see if that develops a relationship, that's a positive thing and worth the while. But I wouldn't want to overburden people with 6 or 7 like we did in the past.
So I will call on the people who raising a hand. I want just to respond quickly to both Brett and Robert. Brett, your question belongs to tackling the defined objectives. Okay, are we benefiting from it, or we want other people benefit from us? That's a perfect question for objective. Robert, yes, the staff was part of outreach. Okay, so we're assigned to EO, and I don't know, EO could assign to his or her staff, but EO did take on quite a few organizations to do the outreach. So just to tell you history-wise. Now I like Pascal to come in to tell us something that from his experience.
Thank you, Tian. Just a thought I'd like to share, and that is that perhaps we could use a series and sequences of introductions to stakeholders in the state or in California, and maybe we channel the effort through either our communication committee or a component of staff that's dedicated or has a dedication to community outreach, and we advise those folks that we want to have communication with of the strategic goals and objectives that the board is facing that particular time, for instance, in 2021, and also invite them to provide their perspectives and opinions on those strategic goals, and identify for them who their current board representative is. That way it can ignite an opportunity for those stakeholders to respond, connect to the board rep, and then the board rep can follow up on gaining those opinions and perspectives on our strategic goals, and then channeling them back up to either the communications committee or staff community outreach component. So that's kind of my thinking on it.
Ebony.
I would like to hear what her perspective is. Is Nilza back?
She's not on my list. She may hear from you, can respond. Nilza, are you there? Can you just speak to us if you're there?
This is the moderator, and I do show that Nilza is connected and she is unmuted.
Nilza, you are welcome to joining just simply by screaming, okay? Because I cannot see you. Yeah.
Nilza?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I'm going to recognize you as president. It's Bob Pearman. Go ahead.
So Ebony would suggest if you would be able to listen to us about resuming our outreach program. And she was wondering, do you have any insight you want to share with us? Because you have done quite a few organizations as well.
Right. Well, the outreach program at the university level was a little bit dismal when it came to me communicating with some of the professors. When I did talk to the one that was very interactive with us was the professor at Cerritos College. And he was very concerned, as I mentioned before, that students wouldn't, even though they had the grades, even though they had the ability, they weren't able to get into the program to a actual graduate program because there was no room for them. And that's where we stood. And after that, COVID happened, and then I didn't follow up with any of the professors at the time. But I think we need to make a bigger effort in figuring out what we can do to ensure that students of color have an opportunity, an equal playing field in the field of architecture. And how we do that is maybe starting earlier at a high school and junior high level.
That's interesting. And Nilza, I would think along that line as well. And with that said, actually, I like to have Sunny to speak first, then Robert, do you mind to share with your dialogues with the high school district of your findings after Sunny? Okay. Robert. Okay.
Thanks, Jen. I want to just follow up with kind of on the back of what Brett said and a little bit of Ebony, but my question maybe is also just for our staff. does this organization that we're on the board of have any oversight over the education process in the state of California?
Sunny, this is Laura. Do you mean, does our board have any oversight on the education?
That's right.
We
That's
do not,
right.
no.
So the nature of this conversation is getting back to the goals. What were the original goals, and what's the idea that they could be, and is this suggesting a potential future oversight, or just simply quote unquote friendlies?
Sunny, so we do not have oversight now. I don't know if board will intend, it could be today's topic, to have more influence on the education side, how do you call it, pedagogy side of the education. But we're on the receiving end. We do have a list of the programs that we give them credit in a certain way in terms of equivalent to education and our experience. So, right, yeah, so we have some interactions, more passive than positive.
That's okay. That's helpful for me, because I was trying to wrap my head around, what the incentive is for the collegiate side of this to involve themselves with us, and that in and of itself is enough carrot for me. I think, because look, I think the cold hard truth of our education system, as far as architecture is concerned, is that there's a huge disconnect between our education and our licensure. What we are taught in school as architects, 9 times out of 10, has nothing to do with what we need to become licensed for. So in other words, we're not taught in undergraduate or graduate school necessarily what we are then tested for to become a licensed architect. And for me, that is where that would be a goal of this conversation. And I see, and just to pick up on a couple of things from the past, the things that I've seen that could be a sort of gateway into that conversation with the schools are the schools that are specifically IDP aligned. So the new organizations that allow their students with NCARB and the AIA to begin taking the test while they're in school. And so I don't know if there's any way that our board could encourage all of the schools to sort of participate at that level, but also to teach the things that we are being sort of tasked with sort of protecting our constituents from. That would be a very clear stated goal. And along with all of that, obviously, it would seem to me it would be very easy to add diversity as a major component of that conversation. So I know that was a lot, but I'm very opinionated when it comes to this, and I would like to see more dialogue, but I think we're sort of, our hands are tied a bit just because we don't have a lot of oversight over the education process.
I will let Laura to decide to share some of the experience Laura and I have with schools education program, how they will be counted as our experience on education credit. But now you reminded me, Sunny, that we do have some interest in the school education program, such as IPAL. For example, IPAL allows students to take exam early because we support the IPAL, so therefore, as a regulatory body, we say it's okay. So there are some incidents like that.
I said IDP, but I meant IPAL. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I meant IPAL, yes.
So Laura, what do you feel? Do you think we should share University of San Francisco's architecture program story, or it's relevant or not? I let you and you decide.
I'm not sure that that's relevant. I think Sunny brought up a good point. That, I mean, the board does have limited influence over this, but just from, I can say from my experience being at the board, AIA has had a few architectural education summits that I've been able to participate in, and there definitely is that disconnect, at least in some of the institutions, between what they do and licensure. And for some of them, licensure is not an issue at all. It's not anything they promote or tell their students about. And so, that's certainly, something for the board to consider. And I would just suggest maybe that this is a good topic for the board to consider. And if you want to discuss it further, it might be a good one to add and fully develop when we do strategic planning at the September board meeting. We could talk about it maybe a little bit more in depth and have some more ideas for you.
And I see 3 more hands. I read it over. If it's the current one, you can speak up. I read Pascal. I have Sunny. I have Brett. Is this an old hand or new hand?
Ron also wants to speak as well.
Ron, I cannot see him. I don't know why. Ron?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead, Ron. It's your turn.
I think I share the comments that were expressed by both Sonny, Robert, and Ebony. And I think the ultimate question for me is the value add of this relationship to both educational institutions and professional organizations. I clearly understand the association, the value add that we provide to academic institutions, particularly as it pertains to the path of licensure. It's the professional organizations that I basically can't really wrap my arms around as I look at the list. And I basically say, and I see that there's tremendous value in an association, but if we're trying to look for reciprocal responses, I don't necessarily think that at least what I'm reading on the screen here in terms of the objectives, I'm not sure that the value add is clear in those objectives. And so that's what I would be looking for.
Whose turn is it, Tian?
We can't hear you, Tian. I'm sorry. I think you're muted.
Sorry, I'm not. So I was thinking, yes, a part of discussions already shaped the discussion or the objective of this program already, and I hope the staff is capturing them, and we can decide to have something that's ready for make a decision at the June meeting. If we think this is more long-term, we can even, as Laura mentioned, put in the strategic plan discussion. But I think the program have enough merits, and if we can define objective more clearly, we can make a decision in the next board meeting. But anyway, Pascal, would you want to coming back to?
Sure, just a few closing words. When the staff considers this, or when you, Tian, and Laura consider this, I think that you should, in the back of your mind there, consider that the board, for lack of anything else, has the power of information. And in California particularly, because we've spoken about the limitations of access by diverse communities into the profession. And one of the things that California carries more so that is of great value, I believe, is that our multiple pathways to licensure. And that information disseminated not only to all the way down to the middle school level, like I heard mentioned, but also encouraged in practice-based learning, so that there's consortiums of firms that are then can connect with schools and open up those opportunities for multiple pathways to licensure. Not everyone has to go to college in California and get that NAB degree to become a licensed architect. A lot of people don't subscribe to that pathway. It's more difficult, of course, but it is a pathway and it's available. But unless that information is disseminated out there to collateral organizations, it goes, it goes unknown. So take that into consideration, I hope.
Moderator, could you move to next slides, list the educational organization? Sunny, are you withdraw your hand? Or you want to speak?
No, I just wanted, I couldn't tell if you were about to leave this topic or not.
No, we're not leaving the topic until we exhausted our energy.
Okay, great. I'll be silent, but I do have a few more comments. So when you guys are ready.
Okay. Yeah, I do like have Robert talk to us a little bit about the outreach that he had with school district, and it's to my surprise, really, school districts, at least the one he contacted, is really on the par. That's my view. I think Robert is that okay. I did not really have your slides, but maybe you can verbally to share what the conversation was.
Sure, sure. So I basically reached out to the Los Angeles Unified School District, and because I'd heard in a call that they had a fair amount of architectural design programs in their curricula at some schools, and apparently 15 schools have a program and curricular that has 3 levels of training in, design and architect for middle school pathways, and then people in freshman to junior and then seniors who are looking to go into architecture and design. And so that's the type of thing that I think in terms of the outreach role that we can do. If we find these things out, we can maybe share good things with other similar situation districts or prepare best practices and that type of thing. Maybe there's districts that don't have anything and would like some sort of a template for that. And so if we do reach out to whatever these organizations, schools are, find something good that helps with the practice in some way, whether it's directly regulatory involved or not, we can then, as Pasquale said, disseminate the information and be an important voice in doing that.
That was really a strong feedback. For example, my son grew up here. I know him from kindergarten, preschool, all the way to high school graduation. I have not seen anything similar, Robert, or that the program that that school district has. So it looks like perhaps there is at least the information part is very useful to the board. And then also, as Pascal mentioned, the board also can offer information. Maybe in that regards, I think could be one of our objectives that in this program is about information sharing and how they may influence or benefit for the industry. Sylvia, you raised your hand. Sylvia, your turn.
Oh, yes, I had to make sure I unmuted myself. Okay, so the way I'm looking at it now, because I really appreciate all the comments, especially from the new members, because when we walked into this program, it was an existing program, had been around for I don't know how long, definitely preceded when I got on the board. And so it was a kind of a done deal, and the program had already been sort of, let's just say, programmed. And so, we just kind of followed the protocol. But now that I'm hearing these fresh perspectives from the new board members, I see that there are 4 really different paths here. And that's probably our problem from the previous attempts. Because if you look at the first slide, which is not on here anymore, it was organizations, right? And those are, to me, those are or I should say arm's length. And to me, really, really low on the priority, and I'll explain why. The schools, the list that we're looking at now, on the left side are the universities and the accredited programs and so forth. This group is really important in the sense that they are really the next in line for us to be able to impart our knowledge and the pathway. For the most part, they already know quite a bit because of what they've been told and the resources they have within the universities and the colleges. So they're pretty well established, and they need a little bit of nudging and maybe some mentoring from us, but they're on their way. The group on the right, the colleges, I think this is the sweet spot because they're ready to make a decision. To Pascal's point, some of them will not go beyond this, and they'll just go into practice, and they go through a different an alternative path to licensure. Some of them, hopefully, will transfer to 4 or 4+ programs to get their professional degrees and so on. And then the last group, which is not on any list but mentioned by a lot of you, some of you, and that's the high school level. So to me, if you agree with me, there's 4 different communication methodologies that I see that are different from each other, and different parts of where they are in their thinking. Obviously, in high school, they're thinking, they're exploring. In the community college, they put their toe in the water and they are learning stuff, and they have to make a decision where to go. In universities, they're ready to go, and they need some help to kind of push them toward the next level. And then the last group, really, I'm not really sure, what we have to do with it per se, but so therefore, if we agree that there are 4 different paths and maybe they're prioritized or whatever, then we can go somewhere. We can get a little more organized and figure out how we want to approach each of the groups. So that's my kind of big high-level thinking right now. I'm not offering any suggestions on how we might go about it, but at least identify that we definitely have 4 different messages.
Okay.
Can you reiterate what the fourth group was?
Oh, yes, the 4th group was the previous. Why don't we go back to it, moderator, please? The previous slide. Yeah, this is the under organizations. See all those? Yeah, the under organizations. This is the group that I had the most difficulty with, and everybody else I heard, with the sole exception of AIACC, who shows up at every board meeting, our board meetings, except today. And I think I didn't see anyone there. Anyway, with the exception of AIACC, it was almost impossible to reach them. Am I right, fellow board members who were trying previously? Just nod your head or whatever.
Crickets.
They were just crickets. Yeah, they were impossible. And I say, I'd almost X them out, or as an alternative, I've been thinking that this group is the right group for our staff to handle, because this is a group. You agree with that, Sunny?
Well, I want to I want to ask you and also the staff, that book that's put out that you guys gave us maybe 3 or 4 sessions ago. That's a manual for instance, building code officials. Did that have any help or any coordination with this kind of communication, or was that just completely separate needs, like based on some of the landscape discussions that we've been having?
This is Laura. I think you're talking about the building official guide. So we do have ongoing communication at the staff level with a lot of these groups. I'm in a group that meets quarterly, and it includes several of these organizations, including the related boards. So I think Sylvia's right in that a lot of this contact does happen at the staff level.
Yeah. It's just not going to happen with us, Sunny, because, I've called them and they're really pleasant. Like my assignment with Urban Land Institute, well, they don't want to talk to us. Why? Okay, so Laura, it would be super cool for us to take this off of the volunteers' plate, continue with what you do at the staff level, because that is an ongoing dialogue over many, many years. And let it just stay, let's say that keeps going. And then the latter 3 are we can concentrate on those. That's sort of my opinion anyway.
Okay. So before I summarize this, any member wish to speak?
Hi, this is Nosa. I'd just like to make a last comment, if I could. The efforts are going to be great, but without having the universities make room for diversity students, while also accommodating for international students, there's going to be a shortage of spaces. So we need to figure out how to simultaneously do what you are all suggesting, and I applaud, but we also have to partner with the university so that they open up more spots for USA-born students. And how we do that is a problem that is going to take a lot of our brains to come up with a suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, so with that said, I suggest the next step is for staff, based on today's discussion, and try to draft more specific and succinct objectives if we are resuming this program. I would prefer call this outreach program instead of liaisons program, but I'm open to the terms. And also make initial suggestions of if these are the categories of the organization we are reaching out, which now we're adding a new group, which are high school or school districts in general. And what will be staff's recommendations and to keep them, the entire list. Also, I suggest staff to take a first cut, see if, these responsibilities should be performed by staff or performed by board members. And then we can have a discussion at the June's meeting. I actually prefer we can make a decision in June's meeting, and we can do if we decide to resume the program, we can at least do one outreach by the end of the year. So that is my summary. Anyone has any comment on my summary, including staff?
This is Laura. We can do that. Yeah, we'll put it on the June agenda, and Tiana will work with you as we create that draft before it goes in the packet.
Okay.
And the public, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. And then now we want to open to, before we're wrapping up this program, we want to open to a public comment period. Moderate, please reach out, please open up the form.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the question mark within the square located in the lower right-hand portion of your screen and type "I would like to make a comment" and send to all panelists. All comments will be taken in the order they are received. I will pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. At this time, we have received no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
This feature has been closed.
Board members, if you don't mind, I like to adjust my breaking recess plan a little bit. I like to invite the CA's budget office to give a budget discussion first, or we want to take a break first. Any opinions on this, including staff?
I would like to. I was just going to suggest that for the next meeting anyway, that we might want to build in a break for a quick lunch break, because I have been munching on nuts.
Okay. Okay. Let me ask Laura. Laura, do you mind if Paul can present to us after a break? Is okay?
I'm sure Paul will be fine with that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's very nice. So we use because of good discussion, we use up our time. So let's resume our meeting at 12:15. Is that enough for big lunch, Sylvia?
Thank you. That's fine with me. I hope everyone else is
so
okay.
12:15, we will coming back. Okay.
What time was that again, please? Can you repeat the time?
12:15.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay.
I will have to do a check because she did disconnect. So if you give me a second. Caller number 13, I have unmuted you. If you could please identify yourself.
Hello, this is Nilsa. I'm here.
Fantastic. She is online.
Okay. All right. Should we start it? I hear no objections. We will resume our meeting and going to agenda item I. We will invite Paul McDermott, which is BCA's budget staff, to give us a budget update. Paul, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today. I want to go over a few things, but I want to address what's going to be our fund condition and our expenditure report. But first, I'd like to say thank you to President Feng, board members, Executive Officer Zeniga, and all the members of the public. I am Paul McDermott, and I am the budget analyst from the Department of Consumer Affairs. And for about the last 2.5 years, I have been your budget analyst, and I've had the distinct pleasure of working with Laura Zeniga on anything when it comes to budgets or fund conditions. So I appreciate all her work. The two documents we're going to look at today, one is called the fund condition statement, and the other one's called the projected expenditures. And if you could bring up the first document on the screen.
If you could please let me know, would you like the fund condition or the expenditures?
The fund condition, I think, is the first one in line there. Correct. Okay, so what you're looking at here is our fund condition. And what the fund condition does is shows basically a balance sheet of the board. We have 3 years of figures. We have a prior year, we have the current year, and the budget year. Left to right is obviously the prior year, and we budget the year for you. Top to bottom, we look at our beginning balance, all of our revenue streams, and down the bottom, we look at our expenditures. And at the very bottom, we have the net. So any business owner is going to want to know what is our beginning balance, what are our revenue streams, what are our total expenditures, and what do I have left at the end of the year. So if you read in the first year, which is 2019-20, you'll see that we had a starting balance of, I got to expand that a little bit, of $5,052,000. And then we went through all the revenue streams we had, and we had revenues of $4.6 million. Take those revenues, we subtract out the expenditures, and at the end of the year, we had $5.783 million left over with 16.2 months in reserves. So I want to address that real quickly. What's key about the months in reserves is if everything falls apart and all breaks loose, kind of what we're going through right now in the case of COVID, we have 16.2 months in reserves of revenues to be able to function as a board. So as of last year, that's a pretty good function. We like anywhere from 6 to 12. 16 was pretty good. So if all broke loose and we had an issue, we have enough funds to last 16.2 months. That bottom figure of 5.783 is where we ended the year. And if you scroll back up top, that's where we began the year 2021. So it always carries forward. What we ended with is where we start. And we start the whole process over again as far as tracking revenues, tracking expenditures, and where do we end at the end, where do we wind up at the end of the year. So in the current year of 2021, these are all projections as we've collected everything through fiscal month 6. Everything in the prior year is published on the governor's budget as what we've already collected and in the books. So now we're looking at the middle one, which is all projected figures. So we're projected to bring in 3.621 in revenues. Now, if you look at the prior year, we were bringing in 4.6 million. And next year, we're looking to bring in another 4.6 million. Architects has a unique collection or revenue stream where they have a high year and a low year. So right now, we're in a low year, and it's a very predictable year. And we're right on track of what we've done the last 3 or 4 predictable low years. So even though it looks a little different, it's right on track of what it should be doing. The revenue streams down the bottom, or I'm sorry, the expenditure. Oh, let me line item where it says general fund transfers and other adjustments. It has a negative 260. As was alluded to by Deputy Director Carrie Holmes and also by President Feng earlier, COVID has put a strain on everything operations and fiscal operations with all departments with DCA. So this year, under CS 3.92, the governor has the ability or has the authority to, if we needed to loan money to the general fund, that's what we do. We loan the general fund money from the boards that had the fiscal strength to be able to sustain the loan. So in this case, architects loaned to the general fund $260,000. Now that loan will be paid back in the future, and it will be paid back with interest. And the loan would not have happened had the board not been, or the fund not been as strong as it is to be able to sustain the loan. So that's what the negative 260, and it should be coming back in a couple of years. I don't know exactly when, but we'll have a better concept of when it'll actually be paid back. And then what you do is you scroll down, and we have the expenditures down below where we have all the 3.96 million of expenditures and the 95 million, which was all the statewide direct pro rata. And at the very bottom, we have a fund balance of $4.87 million left over at the end of the year, with 12.7 months in reserves. So if you recall, I said 6 to 12 months is a solid fund. We're right at the solid fund, at the solid level. So that 4.873, if you go back up to the third column, is the beginning of what we project for next year. So we start where we left off and continue and move forward. And then everything in the budget year of 2021-22 is going to be projected numbers again. So when you look at this fund at this point in solid condition, and the board is doing a great job with expenditures and their revenues. And at this point, I don't see any issues at all with the strength of this fund. Are there any questions on the fund condition statement?
I have a question. So, does governor's office has the power to how do you call it?
Borrow.
Without paying us back? How do you, the term you use to take the 260K permanently without paying back? Is that within his authority?
No, it's not a permanent. It's a loan to the general fund, and most of the programs were hit with or loaned to the general fund this year, based on the authority that they're given under the CS 3.92. So this will be coming back, and it will be coming back with interest. And when it does, I will have another line item up top in the revenue that will tell you the interest that was paid.
So my question is, the governor's office has the power to take the money, or he has to go to the legislation to take this money? In other words, is how secure that we can get money back?
They do have to pay, but yeah, by law they have to pay this money back.
Okay.
Tian, can I follow up on that question of yours?
Yeah.
So the follow-up, Paul, is this. It seems to me that the amount of money, $250,000, is just a little teensy little drop in the bucket of what the state, might need or would need. Is it based on what we could afford rather than anything else? Because, for example, the reason I question it is we could have gone all the way down to 6 months in reserve, right? Right now we're on the very high side, 12.7 months. So the governor could have taken us down to 6 months in reserve and gotten, more like maybe $600,000, $700,000, which is still a drop in the bucket. Is it going to the state general fund or to DCA's general fund? I guess is another question.
Great question. I'll have to defer on what general fund it actually goes to. And I want to say, I'm looking, it goes to the state general fund. It goes.
Paul, this is Laura. That's my understanding.
Okay, so you think it's the state general fund?
Yeah.
Yeah, and which makes it even more of a little tiny drop in the bucket. So are we really help with this little itsy-bitsy amount of money? This seems,
This is Laura again. I would just add that there's multiple general.
Laura, hold a second. Someone, I request everyone turn mute their microphone. Too many reverberations. Okay, Laura.
I was just going to add there are special funds within the state, and so the general fund is going to borrow from all sorts of different funds. So it is a small coming from our fund, but overall they borrow maybe tens and hundreds of millions of dollars from the special fund. So it does make a difference.
So I will go back to other people. Just the reason I ask questions in our organization, for example, the general fund can be just, when you control general fund, you may not be able to get back. So I don't know, just in state systems, are we entitled to get it back? But that's okay. It's not an immediate answerable question. We don't need it. So we have Brett, you have questions.
Yeah, let's look at the heading of expenditures and expenditure adjustments. There's that line 1111, which indicates program expenditures, state operations. First question is, could you explain that? And second, why is it that in the future, this year to 22, it shows it's going down by what, 700, goes up by 700,000? Am I reading that correct? Can you explain what that is and why it's going up? Thank you. Paul?
Looks like Paul is muted. Let me see. Moderator, could you promote Karen Munoz?
Did I come back up?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. So the budget year of 21-22 is a budget number. As we work through this year and have more projected or more accurate numbers towards the end of the year, that number will adjust as well as we work through budget year next year. So right now, that's just a budget year that we've put together, and it will adjust.
What is that item, please?
That's your expenses. The expenses by the board, the bottom line expenses of the board. It'll be the salaries and benefits and the operating expenses bottom line.
So you're saying that that typically goes down as we get closer to 22. Typically, that number will go down the later in time we are.
No, what typically happens with that number, it is adjusted, and let me look real quick. If you look down at the notes at the bottom, it says expenditure growth projected at 3% beginning budget year +1. So as we build this up, we'll have built-in increases. So that's just a budgetary number now. It will be adjusted whether it goes up or down. Typically, I would say it's going to be more in line of how you would spend versus year to year versus just a complete growth. So right now we just have that as a projected number.
Yeah, I still don't understand. Could you explain that a little further? I didn't have a good grade in accounting, I'm afraid.
Okay. Let me see. I think Karen's trying to pop in here. Karen Munoz has her hand up. She wants to address this. Moderator, can you unmute Karen Munoz's microphone?
Karen Munoz, you have been unmuted.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't do a mic check earlier. My name is Karen Munoz. I'm the budget manager with DCA, and I just wanted to address a few questions that you guys have. For the expenditures, this actual fund condition that you're looking at, this is what is identified in the governor's budget. So it is what's public for everyone to see. And as Paul had stated for budget year in 21-22, this is just a projection. We do have adjustments through the fall process, and we are anticipating these adjustments to, normally we adjust them as we project them at a 3% increase going forward. However, with our current pandemic and what we've been going through, this number may adjust lower, depending on if we need to do the 9.23 reduction for salaries in the next fiscal year. there are additional adjustments like employee comp, retirement rates. Those will all impact your expenditure line item in the budget year, but we do not have those numbers yet. Those rates adjust every year, and we just don't have those at this time. So when the budget letter or when the orders come out, we will make those adjustments. But
So,
those usually happen in the fall process.
so you set that higher to be conservative in effect. Would that be a good way of explaining that?
When we do adjust for current year and budget year, those are based on numbers, because we do have a current year and a budget adjustment that we do work through in the last fall process.
Okay.
But budget year is still projected, and we will go in the fall process. We'll make additional adjustments to current year.
Okay.
So we will make
all right.
those.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm still interested in this 260K loan. That amount determined by the state or BCA figured out that this is the amount? Or by some formula?
I can explain a little bit more on that $260,000 as well. The $260,000, that I believe is what the board was reduced based on the 9.23, the PLP reduction in salaries. And because of that, based on control section 3.92, the Department of Finance authorized to transfer amounts from each special fund based on that amount. And so that amount, because you guys were reduced that, they were able to loan that to the general fund. However, the loans will be repaid whenever your fund requires these amounts. But that is what the control section 3.9 authorized Department of Finance to do. I don't know. Question?
Yeah, the level. As Brad said, I don't have a accounting degree, so I try to understand. Laura, is that the budget surplus is because we have not filled some of the key positions like the piece? Is anything relates to our actual labor cost, I call them?
Sean, are you asking why we have a reversion each year? Like what contributes to that?
Why we have that surplus, for the money to loan off? Is that because we have retirement and other things?
Yeah, so the specific amount of the loan that Karen was referencing, all state employees and all the board employees were subject to a pay cut of 9.2% in the current fiscal year. So that 260,000 is the amount of salary savings from that pay cut, and that's what the state borrowed.
Oh, thank you for clarifying. Well, we commend your contribution. That's very nice. Okay. That's okay.
It wasn't voluntary, but there we go.
Hi, this is Ron, and I guess my question is that $260,000, is that an anomaly that it happened just this one time, or does that happen periodically?
The loan to the general fund?
Yes, ma'am.
It has happened in the past. It wouldn't have been tied to a salary savings amount, but in in the last recession when the general fund was in trouble, they did borrow from special funds then as well. It is always repaid with interest.
That's good to hear. It's always repaid with interest. That's great. Okay. Any other questions for our budget staff on this one? Okay, Paul, you want to move on to the next sheet?
Yeah, if we can move to the next item, which would be the expenditure report. So the expenditure report is going to show you from top to bottom where we are year to date and where we project to be year end with month 6 expenditures in the books. So the top part of this document is going to be your personal services, which are going to be your salaries and your benefits. And then in the second half of this, you're going to see where it's operating expenses. Now, the one thing we have this year, we had the reduction in current year budget. We made those adjustments already. And we also have this year the benefit of having a fully staffed fully staffed under Laura Zeniga. So we do have some reductions, but we also have full salary. So we're going to have some increases in the salary, not because of the increase in pay, because we actually filled positions. In the past year, we had some vacancies where we were able to recognize some savings there. If you scroll down to the bottom, it just walk through this. Do I have the ability to scroll through this document, or is it? The place where we had some increases, and Laura and I have talked about this, where we had my projected increases from month 6 to 12. Laura Zeniga and I have also talked about where there's going to be some reductions to be made. So what I did in all these projections, I took the last 6 months, divided it up, and projected it out over the next 6 months. However, with that said, we've talked that there are going to be some reductions on some of these spendings, which will bring down some of these projected numbers that I have here, but we'll only see that in the next month or two as those projections come down. So at the very bottom, I have the projections at $3.96 million, savings of $42,000. Typically, the board saves a little bit more than that, but with this year, with the reductions in the spending and also having the positions filled, we have a little less reduction. I'm not concerned about that right now because the board has been very good on how they spend their dollars that they're charged with. They've been fiscally responsible. I do expect the savings of $42,000 to climb, and I expect the percentage of the overall budget savings to go from about 1.07. I expect it to get up to about 3%. As with the fund condition, we said anywhere from 6 to 12 months was solid. In the expenditures, anywhere from 3 to 6% is solid. So I do expect, as we have in the past years, to be back up in the 3 to 6% as we get more data in come month 7, month 8, and I'll make those adjustments as I see the dollars come in. But at this point, I don't have any concerns on the spending. There's nothing out of the habitual spending, nothing out of pattern. So I'm comfortable with where we are now on the overall dollars. So any questions on this expenditure report?
Going back last fiscal year, we should, for example, saving from our travel cost. Are these reflected somewhere? Are these looks like this is not
a line item. It'll be pretty much in the middle. It'll say in-state travel. If you look over the left, it'll say 53202.
Yeah.
It'll say in-state travel. Last year, you spent $25,000 in travel. We had budget 96. Right now, I'm projecting that you're going to spend $6,300.
We have an unspent amount. These are the fund can stay with our board, or this fund naturally goes to general fund again.
I misunderstood the question.
The surplus from the savings budget or from a traveling budget, are they stay with the board, or they will be go back to state's general fund?
This is the moderator. This is the moderator. I would like to remind panelists that if you are not speaking, to please mute your microphones. It's causing great interference.
To answer your question, these stay with the board. They do not go to the general fund.
Excellent. Brett, is this your question? You just raise your hand.
Yes. There are 2 lines in there, and one is called CP Services Internal and the other is CP Services External. Could you explain what they are? And with regard to the first, I noticed that we were initially budgeted to have 94,000, and we project that in actuality it'll be 56,000 more, it'll be as much as 145,000. Could you explain that?
Sure, great question. So the first one is going to be your CMP internal contracts. This is going to be your Attorney General and your Office of Administrative Hearings. The projection is based off of the actual cases that come to the board. We don't have control of the cases that come to it, but we can take the cases that have been sent to the Attorney General. We can see what they spend every month. We have a track record of that, and then we project those dollars over the next 6 months to the end of the year. So the bulk of that is going to be your cases that are being sent to the Attorney General Office of Administrative Hearings. The second line item is external. That is going to be contracts with the subject matter experts that have to do their job or do their focus with the board on testifying or enforcement and stuff like that. So those are going to be contracts, majority contracts that we track and project out. I don't see this going much higher than what we project, and it might even be lower based on conversations that I've had with Laura Zuniga. But these are just projections based on the volume that has come in the first 6 months.
The important thing to know is that there's nothing staff can do to control this. This is what comes in from the degree of disciplinary issues that come up.
Correct. It's kind of like a double-edged sword. You're almost glad that you're covering the budget amount and you're doing more. That means the board is actually doing its job to do their enforcement. But you also have to account for that overage and make sure that we can cover it within our existing resources, within our existing budget.
Thank you.
Karen, you want to step in to help to answer some of our questions? You have your hand raised.
I actually don't know how to unraise it, but I have no questions.
That's okay. Okay. Board members, any other questions for our budget staff? Okay. Thank you, Paul. Let's open for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to submit a comment, please type "I would like to make a comment" and send to all panelists. I will pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. At this time, we have received no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please, moderator.
This feature has been closed.
We are now moving to agenda item J, update and a discussion of NCOB related activities, as well as regional summit that is taking place next week. I ask Laura to conduct the discussion. Laura.
Okay, thanks. So this is the first part is the standing item we have on updates on committee meetings. And actually, I don't have the regular updates from any board members that have had committee meetings, so I'll let anyone chime in if they want. I serve on the member board executive committee, and we've been pretty active meeting on our own and with the professional conduct committee to deal with discipline across different state jurisdictions and trying to define it better and determine what kind of actions NCORP will take when they get a report and what type of action they would take against a certificate. So that work goes on. And then also in the packet, we have the regional summit agenda. The regional summit is next month. I sent members the registration link. I apologize, the link I sent didn't work, but I sent out a new one. Hopefully everyone is able to register who's interested in attending. So the agenda is in the packet. And there's also going to be a special resolution at the regional meeting for the members to vote on the member boards that would allow for remote meetings. NCARB's bylaws don't really allow for it at this point. So it's an amendment to the bylaws to allow it going forward. And then there will also be regional elections. So we at the board meeting last year at this time, the board discussed the regional candidates, but the board didn't take action and left it up to the voting delegate to make the decision at the regional summit. And Tian will be the voting delegate for the board. I sent out some additional information on the candidates, and I don't know if this is something that maybe Sylvia or Tian would like to talk about further.
Yeah, we probably should. I just want to remind the board members the deadlines today. So that's one of the reasons I want to have a shorter lunch break, so you have time after the meeting to register for the regional summit. Okay, so it's open to every member. So I really encourage you all sign up. And then Sylvia, do you want to talk about the candidacy? We have all three levels: the national and then also regional. So. Sylvia, you want to give an overview, or you want Laura to do it? What, do I have Sylvia?
She needs to unmute. Sylvia, we still can't hear you.
Is this better? Yes. Good,
Yes.
good. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, so Laura and I can probably do this together, but what I did was I pulled up my packet that Laura sent out yesterday, I believe, and in it, it just talks about West Carb Region 6, which is West Carb, the governance, structure, and election process, and in it will show us the candidates for, there are two elections really happening, which is going to be, next week. First one is for regional director, of which I'm a candidate, and then the executive committee of West Carb, of which there are two candidates. And so let me tell you about the competition. It turns out that the packet that we have in our hands shows a contested election between myself and Scott Harm from Seattle. However, I don't know if you all got the letter, but he did drop out of the race. So now I'm going to be running for regional director, uncontested. And it took me a while to figure out what a regional director is. So I'm just going to tell you all so that you're clear what this position is. It's basically an at-large representation on the national board of NCARB. So it's not not an officer position. It's regional in the sense that when I go on the board of NCARB, I would represent us, the Western region. And the Western region is the biggest by far in terms of, I don't know about members, but definitely of geography. So we have, and this is where Laura is going to be really helpful. So we have who you would think, right? The West Coast. So that would be Washington, Oregon, California. And then we have Arizona, we have Utah, we have Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico. I know I'm forgetting something on the mainland.
Alaska.
And then after that, thank you. Yes, Alaska, Hawaii, and then we go even further to Guam. And then recent addition is the Northern Marianas Islands, which is way far away, and some very remote area of the Pacific and a completely different time zone. So, but they're so brave. They actually show up physically at our meetings when we have them, and now they may show up, but they're exactly opposite. So if we have a noon meeting, it's midnight for them. It's just terrible. Anyway, but they're wonderful, courageous souls, and they do show up. the next election that we're having is called the XCOM of WestCarb. Now, XCOM of WestCarb just simply means that this board, this XCOM board, represents all 13 states and areas that are represented, and we take positions and represent the entire western states, so that each state does not have to do so. So that's what this regional summit is all about next week, is we're all meeting within our regions, okay? So the two candidates for the XCOM this year are Tara Rothwell from New Mexico and our own Tian Fang. And what he's running for is, what is basically known as a at-large member. So he's not running for any officer position. He's just going to step onto the board. Tara Rothwell is already currently the vice chair. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm currently chair of XCOM of WestCarb, and Tara is going to be running for the chair position as I step off and go onto the national board. There's one more. I'm sorry. There's one more group, and that is the actual leadership position that are being. They're also uncontested, as far as I can tell right now. There's always the ability to have nominations from the floor, and that's how I got on XCOM, by the way. I was put on it from the floor, so it happens. So Tara Rothwell, as I mentioned, is running for chair. Corey Solon, who's currently Secretary-Treasurer, is running for vice chair. And Catherine Fritz, who's from Alaska, she's currently at large, and she's running for Secretary-Treasurer. So you kind of get the idea of how it works. People do climb up the ladder. But I want to take this moment, too, to say that this is a very unique opportunity for every single one of you, all of us, to go to this meeting and sign up, because what's interesting is that when you go to these meetings, you finally understand what WestCarb's about, for sure, and also what NCARB's about. It's really hard to understand when you hear reports from us. You know, we tend to go, right? Tian, myself, I know Denise used to go, definitely Nilsa goes, Ebony goes. I mean, a number of us have gone, but some of you have never been, and some of you are brand new. So this way, what you can do is sign up, and then you can pick and choose. You don't have to sit there for the entire 2 days. The timing, and maybe Laura, you might go into this more, but the timing goes something like this, generally. 9 a.m. to noon on the first day, and I believe 9 a.m. to noon on the second day, are both business sessions of NCARB and of the the general summit itself. And then from noon to about 2 o'clock or so, we are going to have our WestCarb region, which you really, really need to attend, because that's the occasion where you will learn everything that you need to learn about the running of WestCarb, which is our region and therefore very important. So I'd like to invite everybody to register for sure. You don't have to go to every single session, but definitely plan on coming to WestCarb sessions, which is, as I mentioned, 12 to 2 on the 2 days. Last item is the XCOM met, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and we are going to be, hopefully, if everything works, send like Grubhub or some kind of gift certificate that you will instantly get on your email if you sign up, and you're going to get 2 lunches delivered to you based on your selection. It's going to be $25 each day that you're going to get. And so during the meetings of WestCarb, you get to have your lunch that you order, and it'll be delivered to you, courtesy of WestCarb. So it'll be that's our little tiny ability to pay you a little bit of love for the time you're spending with WestCarb. And think of all the money that they're saving. Just like did you see the amount we saved in travel? Same thing. So no flights, no hotels, no meals, no parties. And therefore, it makes it a lot more doable. So this is my way of saying, please attend. I really, really would like you guys to can and register by today. Laura, anything else that I must have forgotten something?
No, I think you did a great job. Thanks, Sylvia.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, really good. So
There is one more item which, Laura, I think it was about the different resolutions. Do you want to go ahead and start that, and then I can give you more detail on
Sure. So NCARB did release draft resolutions. So we have that special resolution on allowing for remote meetings, but they will consider at their June annual meeting a couple different resolutions. Some are carryover from last year, like on model law, and I think a few new ones. They're still in draft form, so I didn't include them at this point because NCARB is going to finalize them at their April Board of Directors meeting. So they'll appear on the board's June agenda, and then the board can debate them more thoroughly and take a position if they'd like. But I think all the members may have received the emails from NCARB, so you may have those already.
Yes, I did receive a draft of them, and they're going to make a lot more sense to you after we have that meeting, our West CARB meeting itself. Just so you know, Nilza and I have been working with what they call the Diversity Task Force. And our goal is to, of course, put, our money where our mouth is and start getting diverse representation on the board, the national board, which is currently all white males. And it's been going on for some time. Once in a while, there'll be a woman on the board, but it's been very limited in terms of diversity. And so what you're going to see, and I want you to make a note of the of Resolution H. I don't know if it's going to get passed, with the first reading, but what it does is that it reduces basically the number of years it takes for a person who wants to get on the national board to do so by, I'll just quickly tell you how. They're going to take away the second vice president position. They're going to merge secretary and treasurer, and they're going to add 2 at-large director positions. So that means 2 at-large could mean finally that there's an opportunity for people to jump into the board at a much earlier time instead of, you know what the average time is? Is it 13 years, Laura? Do you remember how long it takes?
It's 12 years.
Nilza,
it's 12 years.
Thank you, Nilza. 12 years, you guys. And, it just doesn't make any sense. So, Nilza, why don't you jump in and talk about this a little bit, because we worked hard on this.
Yeah, thank you. What I did want to encourage, I think that Sylvia was right on and having you at least join, because we need the support from everyone to let NCARB know that diversity is important and that they need to change some of the rules they currently have. It really is problematic, I think, and I understand why it's a little bit, it's a tug of war, because, everybody's worked so hard for the last 11 or 10 or 9 years to eventually become a president and, whatever time is left on their reign. And now we're coming along and saying, well, we want to cut this in half. But we really need the support from all members to say, hey, diversity is important, and we need NCARB to take notice and adopt the resolution or the suggestions that we're giving them. It is a little bit, some of the feedback that was provided to us in the last meeting was that our interface, or our inner person that talked to the board and then talked to us said, well, are we just doing this just to do it? And, I went, it was a little difficult for me to hear, and I think I expressed my disappointment. And no, we're not doing this just to do it. We are doing this because we believe in diversity, and when we believe that the only way is to move forward and not stay stagnant. And so I think the board needs to hear that from all of us, not just a few of us. So please, if you have an opportunity to register, if you have an opportunity to send in a comment, or whenever possible, make a suggestion that diversity is important. And in California, we feel that that's the only way that we're going to move forward. Thank you.
Let me
thank you.
chime in a little bit. So first of all, after the meeting, I hope you register, at least make an effort to register. And also in terms of the importance, have California's voice at the national level, something's very tangible I learned myself. For example, California is always believing in multiple paths to licensure. Actually, we have these local heroes right at our board, but many jurisdictions with very particular, very fixed-minded. For example, they demand that a candidate for license must from a NAB accredited architecture school and architecture degree. These kind of differences will play key roles when the representation at the national level and regional level come from California make a difference. So we supported iPower program, we supported multiple paths, and the resolutions that in line with that, we always campaign and for the success of it. And this year, I think our former board member, John Baker, is running for the second vice president, and Sylvia is now running completed the position for the regional director. I'm just encouraged by Sylvia. I try to learn the system. It's a complicated system, but somehow I think this year I was a candidate for the committee member, right, Sylvia, but we still need someone to nominate us and second the nomination at the meeting.
Right.
So
right.
Even both for Sylvia's position and the position that I am applied to.
Yeah, that's right. And then it would be, yeah, you're right. And thank you for that. We also should get more of you involved in West Carb by running for these positions perhaps next year, now that we're going to get Tian in, because he's running kind of uncontested at this point. So that makes it better. Last year was a contested election, so it was more difficult. So this year is going to be great for us to slip in 2 California members. I'm going to be on the national board, which is kind of exciting. And I decided that I had to put into action what I've been talking about. So Nielsa, hopefully you're proud of me. I just went ahead and did it because I felt it was time, right? It was time to show some diverse representation. And you know what? I'm in the position to do it. Now's the time. So it's really, I think we're going to see real change. And hopefully it's not just a trend, like it's a fad for a few years and then we go back to all the same old, same old. I believe that with these changes, we are going to make a difference. And as long as Nielsa and I, and hopefully in the future, some of you get on this diversity task force, we're going to keep our voices loud and clear. So anyway, I look forward to seeing that you all joined the meeting. And guess what? Free Grubhub lunch for those of you who sign up. Yay. That's incentive enough, isn't it? Okay, I'm done with my report.
And this is Nilsa. In addition to that, if you have an opportunity to join, you get to make lasting change at NCARB for diversity. So please join. If nothing else, that. And then when we go back to regular life, I'll buy you a glass of wine or a cup of beer, whatever you want. Tell me.
Such incentive. Okay, thank you, Tian. I think we're done with that.
Chao, Sunny, you want to talk? Or you just accidentally raise your hand, Sunny?
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you, guys. I'm excited about it. I'm all signed up and I'll be there, and I'm looking forward to learning more about it. I just want to make one comment. I think this is a good time to do it, and we don't necessarily need to talk about it today, but I think it would be something good to talk about in the future. But I just want to remind everybody that with NCARB, we're the largest certificate holder in the country. So the state of California has more architects than any other jurisdiction in the state, and we partake and use NCARB services, which are extremely valuable. but we have absolutely zero direct representation with the organization. So unless you are able to sort of put in this sort of like required or quote unquote forced sort of volunteer work and get into this sort of 12-year pipeline, or obviously less for less, we do not have any kind of representation. Like while we're called board members, we don't have any vote or say whatsoever. So I just think it's an interesting relationship. It's very one-sided, and we don't have representation. And it might just be nice to continue the conversation at some point to, at the very least, start with asking for a change in representation with that organization that comes directly from our board, the California Architects Board.
Thank you. Actually,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Sylvia. Go ahead.
So, okay. All right. So, Sunny, that's a good point. But guess what? Tian just mentioned that John Baker from California, who was our president of this board, just before me, I think. So in other words, about 4 years ago, he was president. Then he went up the ladder, and now he's running for second vice president, which we hope to eliminate, but he'll get in before we slam the gate down on that one. But yes, and I'll tell you what, you guys, John Baker is an incredible advocate for all things California, including such things as the alternative path to licensure, because he's one, and he's just a loud, bold, outstanding advocate for the California cause. So you should know that.
So, Sunny, I just want to personally reflect on your remark. I was actually thinking that I was really enjoying all this volunteer work. Took lots of time at a very tangible level, but not leadership. I insert myself, our California value, our board's value in my day-to-day work with these committees. I analyzed more than 2,000 hours, perhaps over the past 7 years. But you are very accurate. If I just keep doing this committee work, I will only be forever a worker in these committees. So I guess thanks for Sylvia and other people before me to encourage me. Otherwise, you will be forever a worker unless you are a different, you have a different mindsets, and so it's important. As a member, we can always make a difference starting from ourselves. That's why this year, I think, well, let's see how can I really expanding my service from a committee member to a more leadership-oriented role. So just a personal reflection after hearing from Sunny.
Right, and Tian, thank you for the reminder, because I do want to let you know that there's going to be some opportunities coming up at our regional summit where there is a brand new completed strategic plan for this coming year, okay? And in it, we've actually identified action items and actual positions. The person who wrote it was our member from Alaska, Catherine. And what she did was she actually put in blanks right now, but it's going to happen where you will volunteer to be she calls them task leaders, and also members of the committee. So there's a number of committees, task leaders, which is like a project manager for a particular item that we want to make sure gets action upon in this coming year. So another reason you should come to this summit and the regional meeting itself, I implore you guys to, when we get to that section, to look at it and volunteer for those committees. So as Tian says, you might be a task leader for one item, but after that, you might feel like, hey, I know enough about this stuff now. I'm on a California board. I now participate in West Carb. I think what I can do now is X, whether running for the XCOM or whatever you want to do. And then in addition to that, I want to thank our friend Robert Pierman, board member, who has agreed to become a member of Westcard's Bylaws Committee. All the committees, like Education Committee, Bylaws Committee, and a few other committees, are being resuscitated, if you will, and renewed for this year. And thank you, Robert, so much for agreeing to become a member of that committee. It's going to be a big help.
Yes, you dragged me kicking
All
and
right.
screaming, but I'm happy to do so.
I didn't say it that way. I said agree to volunteer. Much more passive. Anyway, yes, he did not argue with me at all. He goes, how much work do I have to do? Do I have to travel? And obviously the answer for the next calendar year is we're probably not going to be traveling, and most of the meetings will be done online. So you guys, please volunteer when it's that time, okay? Thank you.
Okay, very good. Good discussion. Again, don't forget to register after the meeting if you have not. We are now on public comment. Sorry. A moderator, can we open the public comment period? Thank you.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please click on the question mark within the square located in the lower right section of your screen and type, "I would like to make a comment." All comments will be addressed in the order they are received. I will now pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. At this time, it does not appear we've received any requests for comments. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please, moderator.
You're very welcome. Feature is closed.
Okay. Our next item is the business report from Executive Officer. We will cover board's administration, management, examination, licensing, and enforcement aspects. Laura, do you want to start?
Sure. So this is agenda item K. I'm going to start, before I get into the report, as a follow-up to an item we discussed at the last board meeting. We had a discussion with NCARB about ARE demographic data, and we were looking for specific categories of candidates that are more likely to struggle with the ARE, and we were looking to see what kind of breakdowns they could give us on candidates. So I did have a conversation with NCARB staff. They don't require candidates to report this data, but about 80% of candidates do report demographic data, and so they are currently working with their testing staff to do this type of study for the first time. So they're doing it kind of NCARB-wide. They'll look at gender, race, and ethnicity. They have a large enough reporting for most groups to get good data. So they're going to look at the difference between first-time test takers, repeat test takers, because the pass rate varies widely amongst those groups. So they're going to review all data for about 3 years worth of data. They're going to report back in April for the first time, and that'll be NCARB-wide, not broken down by jurisdiction, but the next phase of the report in June will likely be broken down by jurisdiction. So I'll be able to report more data to the board probably at the next board meeting. And then if there's something in the meantime, I will send it out to you. But NCARB is working on this request. We should have some good information soon. Are there any questions on that? All right, so starting with the report, we've got the committee meetings. Communications will meet in March, as well as professional qualifications. REC had a lengthy meeting at the end of last year, so their staff have quite a bit to work on to move forward. Let's see. We have the latest numbers for the online license renewals. And then going on to page 2, we have status of our regulations. And then going on to page 4, we have the ARE data from the last reporting period, so November, December. The number of divisions is down a little bit, I think, and NCARB also began remote proctoring in December of 2020. So you can see when you look at the second chart of the multi-year California versus NCARB, in 1920, it got a little bit better in terms of our candidates compared to the national rate. And then on page 5, we have CSE's data. And then we go into our enforcement actions. Are there any questions on either of those items?
I have one point just to make. Hold on one second.
One point to make on the regulations and the disciplinary guidelines, just that we had a discussion maybe a couple meetings ago about DCA and trying to speed up the rulemaking process. And so I'm looking at the CCR section 154, and just as an example, this talks about the board's 2013 strategic plan developing something that we approved in 2015. And if I'm reading this right, in 2020, it's still not finalized yet. So, you know, we just got the DCA, and the process just has to be better than that in the future.
Yeah, it's a good question, and regulations are sort of my personal bane of existence in terms of the fact that it takes so long to get them approved. It's a lengthy process, and it's sort of a duplicative process because you go through a pre-approval and then you start the formal rulemaking. DCA has made efforts to try to streamline it and make it better. They have a dedicated regulation unit, and we have an attorney, Karen Halbo, who works on just our regulations, which has definitely helped. It's a multi-level process. So I have followed up with DCA because that package, and I think there's one other that have been sitting a little bit. So if I can get a status update, I'll send it out to the board members after that. But I appreciate that you noticed, because it is it's a time-consuming process.
Yeah, and I guess our new board counsel, Michael, he's got some experience, it sounds like, in the legislative end, so hopefully he can help us out in that regard too.
Okay, so
I have Pascal may have a question. Laura, you could.
Hi, Laura. Yeah, this is just a comment, and perhaps I'm just kind of in the shadows of this, but on the multi-year California and NCARB comparison, please check me on this, but I think this is the first time in my time on the board that I've ever seen California surpass the national average.
You might be right about that. It really hasn't happened since I've been here. It usually looks more like the prior year. I think this is partly due to the fact that the administration number of exams given was down, so there was maybe fewer administrations to work with. But you're right, it's unusual. So I mean, ideally we would see kind of continued numbers along this line in terms of, now that the 5.0 has been in place for a couple of years, maybe the pass rates will improve a little bit, but it's definitely something we'll keep watching.
Yeah, I mean, I go all the way back to AR 3.0, and I've never seen this comparison. So kudos to California on this one.
Yay, California.
The other comment I had was, I noticed that the business modernization program is delayed again, that and the internet structure, whatever the board or DCA has been going on ever since I was on the board, and it seems like it never takes effect or implements. So is this delay due to COVID or lack of funding or technical problems, or what's the deal here?
It's a good question, and the modernization's been going on probably since I started at DCA many years ago. And so this particular pause is due to funding. We had funding in the 1920 budget that we'd hoped would be included, but due to COVID, the governor and the legislature made reductions, and so that funding was pulled. So we're sort of on hold for a year. We're going to pursue it again and hope that it gets in the next budget. So DCA is doing great work on business modernization for us. So we've made a lot of progress, but we can't really go too much further until we get the next round of funding and go out and look for a vendor. So we're in a cohort with a couple different programs at DCA, because there were about a dozen boards that didn't go to Breeze, which is the DCA system, and so we'll look at a different vendor most likely. The other 4 other boards have gone forward, and they've chosen a different vendor beyond Breeze. So we're excited to eventually move forward. Fingers crossed that it will go forward in the next fiscal year.
Laura, I have a suggestion. If the communication committee's meetings agenda have not published yet, would you consider to Ickering again, including that board public outreach item may be suitable for the committee to take a look.
Yes, Jane, probably the manager over that unit, already made that suggestion, so we'll add that to the communications committee agenda. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Brett, go ahead.
May I ask a question? Thank you. Laura, could you explain a little bit about why the rulemaking process takes so many years?
I'll do my best. It's the process should be maybe 12 to 18 months in terms of the fact that like the formal process, the board would, staff would develop language, the board would vote at a meeting to formally move forward with that proposal, and it's called, initiating rulemaking, and then you start the process with the Office of Administrative Law, and there are notice periods that need to be met. It goes out for public comment. You have a hearing if there's comments. You respond to comments. But so that process just takes some time. But prior to that process now, the department requires boards and bureaus to send their regulations for pre-approval. So we essentially do that whole process where we draft the language, we send it through DCA, through the multiple levels of approval there. It goes to the agency above DCA, it goes to finance, and they do what's like a pre-approval. And that takes the same amount of time, 1 to 2 years. And then after that process is complete, we initiate formal rulemaking and actually really start the regulations. So it's just a multi-year process to get regulations adopted at this point. And then also regulations used to take effect 30 days after they were approved by the Office of Administrative Law. Now it's on a quarterly basis, so that pushes it out a little bit further as well. So rulemaking has just gotten a lot more complicated from when I first worked on regulations many years ago at the department. It just, it's a lot more time consuming.
Is that because prior to that there wasn't considered to be enough due process, or because rules were coming out with errors in them, or the rules were, or there was a political environment of deregulation that caused people to want regulations to be slowed down and more carefully considered before they were enacted?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's multiple parts. It's that the legislature definitely scrutinized the rulemaking process and wanted kind of more attention paid to it. So that's why they now take effect quarterly versus 30 days. And the legislature has tried to increase their oversight a little bit. The department, the reason we do the pre-approval process is that a few packages had been disapproved by the Office of Administrative Law, which means that the board had not necessarily ours, but a board within the department gets their package disapproved, and it's a lot of time that you're putting in, and then to have the package disapproved, can be seen as a lot of wasted effort. So the department does the pre-approval process in part so that all those issues can get ironed out before you start actual rulemaking, so that you have a better chance of success. And then also just all the parties involved in the approval are just scrutinizing it, I think, and spending more time on it. Like the Office of Administrative Law, it's definitely more challenging to answer all their questions and meet all their requirements. And then, we have Department of Finance that looks at it, the agency staff, and Department of Consumer Affairs, the budget side, the legal side, as well as the executive office. So I think it's multiple factors.
Okay, thank you.
I thought will be, for me, it will be interesting to listen to our new attorney's perspective. Michael, is there any insight you may want to share with us in that regard, rulemaking? Why it's take that long?
Yeah, I can try to address that a little bit. I did see Karen Halbo in our attendance list a little bit ago, but I'm not sure if she's still with us. Maybe she'll pipe in if she is. But around a year and a half ago, the department developed a new regulations group of attorneys within legal. So the regulatory packages are now assigned to Ms. Halbo rather than to me as your board legal counsel. So there was a separation of duties there, and they're instituting new processes, and the idea behind that is to streamline and hopefully speed up this process. But I can also speak to Ms. Zuniga's comments my understanding is that previously the department did not need to acquire approval of the agency, the cabinet level agency that supervises the department, and based on some of those packages and some changes that they now do, so there's another layer of review there. But otherwise, Laura covered it really as best as I could. I'm there as a resource to Regulations Council, but it's in their wheelhouse at this point in terms of doing the packages themselves.
Okay. So Laura, do you want to continue? Yeah.
Sure, thank you. So let's see, we talked about the pass rates, and then on page 5, you can see the citations, administrative actions we've taken. On page 7, the update on the enforcement program, you can see the different types of action we've taken, as well as the data on the complaints received. The categories stay pretty consistent as to what our most common violations are, which are listed on page 8 and on to page 9. So actually that's all I have. If there are any questions from the members? Looks like Brett might have his hand up.
I don't know if it's an old hand or new hand. Just curious, any recent data is that the pandemic somehow maybe positively impacted the enforcement case? Are we having less enforcement case, for example? Any reading at all?
I don't think it's had a significant impact. I think there was a little bit of a slowdown, but then it sort of, initially, but it sort of stabilized after that. So staff are doing a great job staying on top of it all.
Okay. Great. All right. If no further questions or comments, I like open to public comment again. Moderator, if you want, open up the floor.
Absolutely. This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a public comment, I am displaying resource for your reference. If you would like to make that public comment, ensure that you type, "I would like to make a comment," and send to all panelists. I will pause momentarily to allow you time to access this feature. At this time, it does not appear we've received any requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Feature has been closed.
Thank you, Laura. Next agenda item is review of future meeting dates. I do have some remarks, but I like to open up the conversation. I open to Laura give us some dates and the current plan first, and then I will have remarks.
Sure. So the schedule is here in the packet. As you can note, we did move strategic planning, which was originally planned for the December board meeting, to the September meeting, making it a 2-day meeting. So that we'll have board business and then a session devoted just to strategic planning. And then that will allow the board to adopt a new strategic plan at the December meeting as our current plan ends at the end of this year. So the timing should work out better. At this point, the department's still encouraging boards to meet via WebEx. That authority to do so continues as long as the governor's executive order is in place. So I don't really know any more about when that might end. So I think boards have asked, and the department, I think, has made the note that if we do need to make a transition to physical meetings, we would need a little bit of lead time to make that plan, make arrangements for that. So I will keep board members posted on that. But at this point, we'll just continue with the WebEx meetings. And then we would need a statutory change to keep meeting like this once the executive order ended, because the Open Meeting Act doesn't allow us to meet this way in normal.
Right, but I believe that the vaccination for everyone who wants it will be done supposedly by summer, right? I think. I'm not 100% sure of that. And if that's the case and everybody feels safe, we have the authority anytime we don't need any permission beyond you, Laura, to make it in person again?
Right, we're not prohibited from meeting in person. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it's a possibility, although slim, that we could meet in September, and December looks pretty possible at this point. So if that is the case, then I would at least recommend that we bring that meeting to San Francisco so that this time I can host the pre-board dinner.
For December?
Finally. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I could ever outshine what Nilda did, but I'll make an attempt.
Okay. So yeah, that's probably a good place for me to jump in. So for the time I have been on the board, I think I attended 2 strategic sessions, if not 3. And each time I feel a little stressed. So the strategic plan is a big deal, and I was hoping that if we cannot really accomplish in one day, and we have question marks on residual concerns, at least we can formalize it and respond it by the end of the year, so we have a very clear marching order. That's why I suggested to Laura that we move to September, and so we can have a more substantial discussions. If we need some time to finalize, make a formal adoption, we can do so still in the next meeting. So I hope that that move is okay with the full board. Also, on the similar thinking as Sylvia, Laura and I think the June meeting will be online. At least at this point, we decide to do that, so we don't plan otherwise. However, we want to hold that September meeting announcement as late as we can, in hoping it's safe for us to get together in person. It's better, more conducive when we talk, discuss, and formulate our plan like a strategic plan. So I just want, this is Laura and I have been discussing. I just want to share with the full board to make sure you all feel comfortable with this.
Yeah. Agreed.
Any concerns, comment? At least I hope one of you raise your hand. Very quiet. Anyone want to say something? Nilza, you will say something. Are you there, Nilza?
I'm here.
Okay, any comments about our plans for the meeting?
No, I'm ready to see everyone and give you all a hug and buy you a beer.
Okay. Okay. Someone wants to say something, I heard. Pascal, go ahead.
Just as a note to Nilsa, you never drink beer out of a cup.
See, what do I know?
All right. If we have no further comments, we will move to the final agenda item, which is to adjourn this meeting. Oh, no. Do we need a public comment for future meeting dates? Michael, do we need a public comment?
Yeah, yes, Mr. President, we should.
Okay. We'll open up a public comments on agenda regarding future board meetings.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a public comment, please type on the question mark within the square located in the lower right portion of your screen and type "I would like to make a comment." All comments will be answered in the order they are received. I will now pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. At this time, we've received no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, please.
Feature has been closed.
So before we adjourn this meeting, I have a suggestion. If, in fact, June meeting will be potentially last online meeting. I asked staff or some volunteer board members. I like to have a nice on-screen shot to document our meetings, or we can go to the recording to find a good image. I think that might be some historical value to it if you look at it, 10 years from today. With that said, it's always very nice to see you and discuss with you, and have a safe time until next meeting. Okay, meetings adjourned.
Thanks, John.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Good seeing you guys.
Bye, guys. Stay safe.